and welcome to a Lady Well Traveled podcast. I'm your host and creator, Shannon Bednarova, and I'm delighted that you've joined me today. On this podcast, we talk about all things travel. And as long as we face it with humor, a little bit of southern sass, and a lot of reason and logic and fun, we can talk about pretty much any topic. So, today we're going to be talking about traveling and cultural differences between Americans, Europeans, and the British Isles. It's called Minding the Gap. If you've ever been on a ride on the metro in Great Britain, you'll know what that means. We want to welcome our esteemed guest. Her name is Jenn Voss. We're so happy to have her join us today. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
And we are so happy to have her. Jenn is really just, she's kind of a new friend, but she's an old soul and seems like somebody that I've known forever. She's an Epicurean, a bon vivant, a Francophile, someone who has traveled extensively throughout continental Europe. And she's just a person that I'm delighted to have with us today to have our discussion on cultural differences. I really think you're going to be learning so much from her as well. So, Jen, would you like to share a little bit with our audience about your background and what brings you here to A Lady Well Traveled?
Absolutely. I'll just share again. Thank you so much for having me.
Sure.
I'm so happy to be here. I'm so happy that we've connected and with our friendship, and
Absolutely.
now we're on this amazing trip.
I know.
And thank you for that introduction because that was quite lovely. By further introduction, as you know, I'm a wife,
Sure.
quite literally to a rock star, and so he travels constantly, albeit a little bit differently than the way we're traveling
Right.
now. I'm the mom to two amazing kids, Noah and Abby, who are both great travelers themselves. So
Absolutely.
shout out to them, all the loves of my
Yay.
life. My other loves, obviously secondary to them, would be my cats back at home. The only
Yeah.
downside of traveling is leaving them, but some of my other loves are reading, writing, history,
Yeah.
and all things food and drink.
Yes.
And I mean all things. So whether that involves cooking or dining, both of which I love to do.
Of course.
Food is something that brings me just great joy. And of course, the associated wine and cocktails bring me great joy as well. And as far as travel, I learned through years ago through a business I used to own and travel that I was required to do through that, mostly domestically. That was really my intro, just that I love travel in general.
Right.
Everywhere I went, I was out of the airport a few hours and I thought I should move here. I should move here. I loved everywhere that I went.
Yeah.
I loved meeting people and seeing how people, even in the US, live differently than I do at home in Virginia.
Sure.
So that then led me into taking larger trips and discovering that I really, really love traveling to Europe. And that became a real love for me. I had always been a bit of a Francophile, largely because of my love of literature and of history. And you just fall in love with France through the course of studying those things. And of course, my love of food. And so getting to visit France a number of times and explore its food and drink culture in particular really just cemented that for me. It's also traveling to France and Italy and just Europe in general has helped me appreciate things to which I hadn't been particularly exposed before. A lot of art that I was unfamiliar with and is becoming a new love just by being exposed more and seeing this great art heritage that Europe has. I have a little bit interesting story about that. We were talking earlier to kind of jog my memory. What's something that I've seen that I've loved? And I was thinking of all the wonderful meals that I've had or places that I've been. And I thought, okay, now a piece of art that I love, and I actually discovered this before traveling to Europe. It's called Liberty Leading the People by Eugene Delacroix or Delacroix, on how you want to say it. I could not wait till my first trip to France, eat at the Louvre, and it was unavailable because there was a hall closure that day. So, starting my very first trip to Europe, I thought, when I'll be back, and of course I have been back. And 3 trips to the Louvre, and I've never been able to see it. One time it was out on a restoration project, or the third thing was, so my joke about that is I have to visit the Louvre again. I'm owed a visit
You
Just say
have to
liberty,
keep
liberty.
going.
So yeah, that's a little snapshot.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing that with our listeners. And I know that when we were trying to think about what are we going to talk
Mm,
about, we could spend weeks and weeks talking about the cultural
mm,
differences between Americans, Europeans, and those folks who live in the British Isles. We just kind of came to the conclusion, hey, we probably should start with food and
mhm,
beverages because we both love the cuisine, the wine, the coffee. So why
mm.
don't we start with the coffee? And you and I had talked a little bit about all of the different coffee culture in the different countries. We had talked about different coffees, whether it's an espresso, whether it's a cappuccino, whether it's a short black, whether it's an Americano, whether it's a cafe au lait,
Mhm.
whether it's cafe con leche, whatever
Yeah.
you want to call it in whatever country. Coffee is really, really important to both European and American cultures. I think a lot of times when Americans come to Europe, they're kind of taken aback because there are a lot of differences. You and I talked a little bit about how Starbucks coming into the world and coming into America really has kind of brought about a revolution because there was a time where there were so many coffees that you only drank the coffees with milk and cream. You only drank in the morning. And now you can drink a cappuccino or a cafe au lait at any time of the day, and that's perfectly
The
acceptable.
Starbucks effect, yeah.
Absolutely, the Starbucks effect. And even in Great Britain or the Scottish Isles, where tea was always the drink that was preferred, now you're seeing coffee shops everywhere. Coffee is really taking over. I know we've talked about the differences between coffee and espresso, of course, just a strong, strong shot of coffee that is very thick and black and is two or three sips. So tell me a little bit about your standing espresso.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
Mhm.
When we're thinking about in Italy, this was something that I was really interested to discover. It is not uncommon. In fact, it's quite usual when you go to a coffee shop. Many people will be ordering their morning espresso, and what you'll see is they when they order, they'll let them know that they'll be doing a standing espresso, and
Right,
they'll be standing in the cafe, sometimes just outside, because a lot of those cafes are very tiny, but they are just standing there, and they will drink
right.
their espresso standing. And yeah, it's very interesting.
Hmm.
I didn't actually quite know the reason why. I knew it was a thing. I didn't
Yeah,
quite know until we had our conversation and you
right.
shared with me why.
And the cover charge, people will drink coffee in Europe and stand in the morning, whereas in the United States, they typically sit. And we like to sit because that's just the way we are. But in Europe, they stand because there's a cover charge if you sit. The cover charge typically handles the cost of turning over the table where you would sit. That means replacing the linens, replacing the silverware, replacing the glassware that you may use while you're sitting and drinking your coffee. So you can save money actually if you decide to stand and drink your coffee.
I,
So that's what a lot of Europeans do.
and with the size of an espresso, it sort of makes sense. And we also did discuss, besides just turning the table over, we do know that space is at premium in Europe.
Absolutely.
It's not like in the United States. And so
You are
I
right.
can understand they're thinking, if you're going to take up, 5 square feet,
Hmm.
you should have a little
We're going
cover
to
charge
charge
for
you
that.
for
And that,
that.
yes, and that makes total sense. Now, speaking of espresso,
Yes.
we should talk about its part in making the drink named after us.
Right, absolutely. And that is so important because I think a lot of times Americans come to Europe and they're expecting this huge mug of steaming coffee like they make at home. But one of the things I think a lot of us need to realize is that you don't typically have drip coffee makers in Europe. One of the things that you're going to have is something called an Americano. Jen, would you like to tell us what an Americano is and why that is something that a lot of Americans order when they come?
Absolutely. So basically, they'll make their espresso, which is the base of their coffee drinks, and they will water it down with hot water to get it close to the consistency and taste of an American palette coffee, a drip coffee. And not just that, it will be closer to the size we're used to. Now, it's not going to be a venti size. Yes. I mean, that would probably take quite a few espresso shots with hot water, but it's going to be closer to a normal takeaway coffee that we would expect.
Then when they give that to you, you can kind of sugar and cream it up to your liking. Another thing that I just wanted to let our listeners know is please don't expect the wide variety of creamers that we have in the United States, because when you go to the grocery store in the United States, there's every kind of creamer. There's oat creamer, soy creamer, almond creamer,
and every other nut.
Absolutely. And every flavor. There's peppermint mocha, there's pumpkin spice, there's this, there's that. You're just typically not going to see that in Europe. If you go to a Starbucks, you may be able to get your oat, almond, and soy milk. And they may have syrups, different flavored syrups. But when you go to the grocery store, just let it be known you're not going to see all of those different flavored creamers. So if you're one of those creamer addicts where you've got to have your pumpkin spice,
it's going to be a little different.
Yeah, a lot different.
Yes, you're going to be able to find some new experiences here.
That's right.
But like you said, Starbucks and even independent coffee shops here will have generally an alternative, and that's newer, but that's exciting. They'll have maybe an oat and then, an oat milk. And we did talk about too, just of note, if artificial sweeteners, if someone's diabetic or something along those lines, you may not find those here. So that would be wise for you.
And that is a very good point, Jen. I like stevia, so I bring stevia in the raw packets with me when I travel, because that's not typically something that you find everywhere here in Europe or in the British Isles. If you like stevia, or if you like something like Equal or Splenda, you may want to tuck some of that in your bag with you when you travel and come abroad.
Absolutely, yeah.
Jen, next we're going to talk about what do you do when you love coffee and you rent an Airbnb or a VRBO. A lot of times when you're reserving these wonderful places to stay, they'll say, "Hey, this place comes with a coffee maker." But I think you and I both know that can widely vary depending on where you stay. Tell us a little bit about that as well.
Yes, you know that this is a hard-won wisdom to find out here. Yes, your listing will simply say under amenities coffee, and you think, oh, how wonderful. And then you get there, and it isn't a Mr. Coffee. It's, of course, a pod machine of some kind. Often it won't include the coffee pods.
Right.
And you can't even have like a safety cache of pods because they all use different pods. It's not like at home where generally Keurig or imitation pods will do in most places, even if there is a pod machine. These are all different, from Nespresso machines to what are some of the Italian ones that you've seen?
Right, Lavazza,
which is delicious coffee, by the way.
It is.
Yes, but they're all different sizes. They don't interact with one another. It's really good. I always say over communication is better. Really reach out to a host at an Airbnb or a Vrbo or a rented home and say, I see that coffee is an amenity. What is the actual coffee provided, or will I need to get my own? And what kind of machine is it? I just think communication is great there.
I totally agree with you. We have also seen, Jen, is that when you go to an Airbnb, a lot of times these coffee makers are all different. They're different sizes, makes, models, and sometimes we don't have really good directions on how we're supposed to use them. They can be very frustrating, and a lot of times there's a lot of trial and error when we try to use them. We've had to resort to getting on Google and looking up YouTube videos to how to work some of these, because they're all like our Keurigs at home or our Nescafes at home. They're just not.
And of course, the great irony is you're trying to do it without having had your coffee. So
That's right. It's just you've got so worn out and you're like, oh gosh, please help me do this without my coffee. Just be aware of those things. So next we're going to talk a little bit about dining out.
I was going to say my favorite thing, but I mean, between coffee and dining out, I don't know that
Yeah.
I can pick a favorite.
I
But
don't think I can either. It's all wonderful. Jen, do you think the dining out experience in Europe and the British Isles is a little different in respect to what it is in the United States?
I think it is a lot different, as you know, Shannon. Yeah, it is. It's different in a lot of ways. All of them either neutral or really good, but it's
Right.
just different than what we might expect. And I
Sure.
think the biggest part of that is the pacing and
Yes.
sort of the way that people look at what their mealtime is spent doing.
Right.
Mhm.
Absolutely. When you are dining in Europe or the British Isles, you need to expect a much more relaxed pace. They're not trying to turn the tables over in a hurry like they do in the United States, where it's kind of like, hurry up, eat this food, here's your bill, and get out.
Don't let the door hit you.
That's right. Don't let the door hit you in the butt on the way out. Yeah, they typically want you to relax, have a great experience with your friends and family. Something that you're not going to see is a lot of people looking at their phones.
Yes, and this relates to the coffee discussion we just had too.
Yeah.
It's actually quite lovely when you do go to these coffee cafes or breakfast places. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of times there'll be solo diners, like I said, possibly
Sure.
standing, but maybe even sitting at a table and
Right.
having their coffee and maybe having a pastry. And they're not going to be looking at their phones
That's
in
right.
general. They're generally going to be people watching or looking at the street or simply enjoying what's in their hand. And
Exactly. Enjoying the food in
yeah.
front of them,
Hmm.
tasting the food,
Yes.
actually appreciating the wonderful ingredients that the chef has taken the time to prepare
Yes.
and the care. And I think that's again why people come to Europe and the British Isles and they enjoy the food so much
Hmm.
is because they actually take the time to taste and enjoy and savor what they're eating. We
And
don't do that in the United States,
and
unfortunately.
once you move into that, and it can feel like a strange shift,
Yeah,
but then I mean, you start to really see the value in that, and you start to
absolutely.
feel differently about
Of
things.
course,
Mhm.
absolutely. I totally agree with you. I think that we also expect in the United States is that our server is just going to immediately bring our check and
Yes.
just right to the table and, hey, where is our check? But in Europe, typically that doesn't happen because they want us to continue enjoying ourselves. Often you may have to ask for your check. We always say it's a great idea to be courteous and to learn a little bit of the language of the country to which you're going. We talked a little bit about that. Learn how to say please and thank you. If you're going to France, be able to say,
S'il vous plaît,
s'il vous plaît,
merci
merci. L'addition,
for
la
your
check.
check. Mhm.
Exactly. If you're going to Spain, be able to say gracias, por favor. Be able to say a few phrases that will help you just come across as being courteous and kind and gracious. Because remember, again, you're always being an ambassador for your country and you're always
That's a great
trying.
point.
We found, certainly while we're here in Scotland recording live today, is that the people of Scotland have just been so
Wow.
absolutely wonderful. And we just want
Wow.
to shout out to them because everyone with whom we've come in contact, whether it be wait staff, bartenders, taxi
Oh, our
drivers,
guides
they're
have been
just
fantastic.
all
Yes.
wonderful. And so we also want to talk about tipping because in the United States we have a very strong tipping culture.
You could say that again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Getting stronger all the time. Yes.
Absolutely. And in Europe, really, in many ways, there's not really a mechanism for doing that like there is in the United States. A lot of times you will pay for your meal by credit cards. Jen, talk a little bit about how that credit card works because in the United States, you usually take your credit card away and then they come back. But
Yes.
in Europe, it's not that way.
They're never going to disappear with your credit card. And a lot while it can feel a little bit different to have them bring their credit card machine right to the table, and you see this every now and again in the United States, but for the most part, a few years ago, you didn't see it at all in the United States. So it can feel a little bit different, but fun as an international traveler, that feels a little bit better to not see your credit card disappear. So that's a good thing. But among other things, that is a fraud prevention. You know that you never even have to hand over your credit card. You tap it to the machine, or you insert it in the machine and you pull it back. So that's great. If I want to say a downside, one possible downside, or just again one neutral fact about when they do it that way, is they don't have as many options for check splitting and things like that. If they can do it, it's often with manual calculations, and they're just putting in separate numbers. So it's often can be very difficult for them to do checks by seat numbers, or to split something that is a cohesive charge, like a bottle of wine among multiple people. It's just a little bit more complicated. It's a good idea, like everything. Over communicate. That at the beginning, that's going to be possible, so you're not surprised. Just know that that's kind of how it's going to be. And I would tag one thing onto that, because we found not only are we often paying by credit card, but in some places, I've thought this specifically about Scotland, they're not accepting cash in a lot of places.
They're really not.
And so you need to be prepared for that. Make sure you have a credit card. Also, here in Scotland, most places don't take American Express, and you do find that often in Europe.
Very much.
So be prepared with those things. Always communicate at the beginning. That did remind me about one thing you and I talked about, is if you are in a bit of a rush for a meal, that's something you're going to want to try to communicate. Doesn't mean they'll be able to make things happen for you, but it's better to know at the beginning. People are generally very friendly, and they don't want you to be disappointed with the experience.
Exactly. And I think tipping in the United States is so expected, and really in Europe, it's not that way. I mean, at really fine dining establishments, they'll probably add in 10%. But at other restaurants, they don't do that. As a matter of fact, they don't even have a tip line on the credit card receipt. Like in the United States, it's, that's just always there. It's not that way in Europe. Be prepared, if you think you've had good service, to carry around a little extra change, some small bills, either euros or pounds, so that you can reward your servers for good service. That's something that you'll want to do. And I think it's certainly greatly appreciated. Everybody wants to know that they've done a good job. Everybody does.
I think that's it. We want to, and sometimes even a little bit more, because it's not expected.
That's right.
When there's no turning around of the machine or the screen, it's just going to ask you a question, and then there's none of that. You don't have to sign a slip, but there certainly isn't a line for tipping. And so that makes you feel like, I just want to recognize in some way, or bless you in some way. The way to do that often is to just have some small bill cash with you, so you can tip a taxi driver or your server, or, carrying your luggage or something along those lines.
Absolutely. One of the things that we've talked about is how so many people here in Scotland have really gone out of their way to take care of us, like our taxi drivers. For example, we had one that took us to a grocery store and took care of us. And
because we said we needed some additional bottles of wine.
That's right. And then we had one who, unfortunately, when we were traveling, our location was wrong, and we had to telephone him, and he was just as lovely and kind. And in the United States, they would have probably been surly and unhappy, or even canceled our trip.
1,000%. And it was more my fault than his, and he just couldn't have been happier that he was so kind.
Oh, he was. He was so nice. So, one of the things that we're also just saying through all of this is come to Scotland.
and we'll meet you here, because we have to come back.
It has been great. Thank you, Jenn, so much for being my guest today. We barely scratched the surface.
It's so true. It just means this needs to be a series we do.
We'll have to do this again. And it's just been so great. I appreciate you sharing your knowledge with the listeners. And it's been so fun, as always.
It has been great.
Yeah.
Some of my favorite
Absolutely.
things to talk
I
about. So thank you for
know.
giving me the opportunity. I appreciate
Sure.
it.
And I just want to encourage you as the listener, if you would like to send in any questions for me or for Jen, you can reach me at Shannon at aladywelltraveled.com. That's Shannon at aladywelltraveled.com. And please invite your friends and family to join us on any of your favorite podcasting platforms. Please, please remember that we're always here for you. God created this beautiful, beautiful world just for you. And you need to get out and go see it right now. So God bless until the next time. Bye
Bye,
bye.
everyone.